November 21st, 1897. Saint-Canut, a small village in the Laurentians, a few kilometers from Saint-Jérôme. In a modest white house by the roadside, a macabre discovery would plunge an entire community into horror and trigger one of the most famous criminal cases in Quebec history. The body of Isidore Poirier, a 41-year-old carpenter, lies in a pool of blood. He has been savagely mutilated, his throat slashed from ear to ear. Next to him, his wife Cordélia Viau, tied to a chair, claims she was bound by strangers. But suspicions quickly turned toward her. An educated, independent woman who didn't conform to the standards of her time. A woman who dared to take a lover. A woman some were already calling the monstrous one before the investigation even ended. What follows is a story of passion, betrayal, social prejudice, and a judicial machine that would lead the fourth and last woman executed in Montreal to the gallows. Welcome to the case of Cordélia Viau. The couple seemed united, at least on the surface. Her brothers and sisters, all older than her, received a good education. Her 3 sisters became school teachers. One of her brothers became a priest. Cordélia would not be left behind. She learned not only to read and write, but also to read music. She played the harmonium and cultivated a certain culture, taking an interest in politics and seeking the company of intellectuals from Saint-Jérôme. For her time, a woman like her was already an exception. On November 4th, 1889, at age 24, she married Isidore Poirier, a 33-year-old carpenter. The couple first settled in Montreal, then in Saint-Canut, in a small house that Isidore built with his own hands, at the crossroads of the Saint-Canut Road and the Saint-Colomban Hill. To make ends meet, Cordélia offered her services as a seamstress. Her social skills and engaging manners attracted a loyal clientele, but also the gossip of the villagers. But behind this respectable facade, tensions were brewing. The couple had no children, which at the time was often a source of gossip and judgment. And above all, Cordélia didn't do housework. It wasn't laziness, but due to a medical condition. A skin problem, probably severe eczema, prevented her from having prolonged contact with water. So it was Samuel Parslow, Isidore's hired hand, who took care of the domestic chores. Coming from a respected family, a bachelor in his 30s, Sam spent a lot of time in the couple's house. Too much, in the villagers' opinion. Tongues began to wag. It was whispered that Sam and Cordélia were having an affair. In 1895, Isidore Poirier made a decision that would hasten everything. He left to seek his fortune in the United States, leaving Cordélia alone in Saint-Canut with Samuel Parslow to help her. During his absence, rumors swelled. People talked of clandestine visits in the evening, of public scandal. Father Pinot, alerted by Samuel Parslow's own mother, wrote a laconic letter to Isidore. "Come back immediately or have your wife come up right away." Isidore, upset, responded to his wife, "Here is Pinot's letter. You can see if it's a letter to send to a man who has rendered him such service. It takes an effrontery priest to have sent me some words without giving me any reason." In another letter, he wrote to her, "For the love of God, drop all the work you do at the church and mind your business. Don't listen to gossip, do your business straight and fear nothing. 1,000 caresses, as many kisses, your husband who lives only for you." Despite these affectionate letters, Isidore's trust was shaken. When he returned from the United States in 1896, he came back not with money, but with debts. And his relationship with Cordélia would never be the same. On November 21st, 1897, the small community of Saint-Canut was shaken by terrifying news. Isidore Poirier had been murdered. The scene was of unimaginable violence. Isidore's body was found in his bedroom, horribly mutilated, his throat slashed from ear to ear. Newspapers would later speak of the horrifying butchery of Saint-Canut. Near him, Cordélia was tied to a chair. She told investigators that strangers had broken into the house, killed her husband, and bound her. But quickly, her story seemed suspicious. The ropes binding her were loose. Her behavior seemed strangely calm for a woman who had just experienced such trauma. Suspicion quickly fell on her and on Samuel Parslow, her alleged lover. Both were arrested and charged with the murder of Isidore Poirier. What followed was a trial that would divide Quebec and make newspaper headlines for months. The trial of Cordélia Viau was a true media circus. Newspapers, both French and English, competed for the most sordid details. The sensationalist press, notably the Montreal Star, led a virulent campaign against Cordélia, portraying her as a femme fatale, a manipulator who led a simple man into a deadly spiral. The evidence against her was essentially circumstantial. Her affair with Samuel Parslow, her supposed desire to free herself from a husband she no longer loved, gunpowder traces on her clothes. Nothing really concrete, but in the highly charged atmosphere of the trial, it was enough. Samuel Parslow, for his part, confessed to killing Isidore Poirier, but he claimed to have acted alone, without Cordélia's complicity. He would later recant his confession, claiming he was forced by police. It didn't matter. For the jurors, the guilt of both accused was beyond doubt. The verdict came down, implacable. Cordélia Viau and Samuel Parslow were found guilty of murder and sentenced to death by hanging. The sentence sent shockwaves through the population. While many applauded the firmness of justice, others began to question things. Was the trial fair? Did Cordélia really have a chance to defend herself? A petition circulated, gathering thousands of signatures. Influential figures in Quebec society pleaded for clemency. The main argument: the death penalty for a woman was barbaric, and the evidence against her was far too weak to justify an execution. The federal government reviewed the request for mercy. In Ottawa, they weighed the pros and cons. Finally, a decision was made that spoke volumes about the prejudices of the time. Samuel Parslow's sentence, the poor, manipulated man, was commuted to life imprisonment. But Cordélia Viau's, the calculating and immoral woman, was upheld. The message was clear. A woman who transgresses society's rules, who dares to take a lover and defy marital authority, deserves the ultimate punishment. On March 10, 1899, a crowd estimated at nearly 2,000 people gathered in front of the Saint-Scolastique prison to witness the execution. A true macabre spectacle. It's even said that John D. Rockefeller, the famous American billionaire, bought tickets to attend. Until the end, Cordélia maintained her innocence. Her last words, according to legend, were a curse. "My death will be avenged. This prison will be destroyed by fire and blood." At 6 o'clock in the morning, the trapdoor opened. Cordélia Viau was hanged. She became the fourth and last woman executed in Montreal. Samuel Parslow suffered the same fate, his pardon having been cancelled or ignored, depending on the source. Strange coincidence or fulfillment of the curse. Years later, the Saint-Scolastique prison, converted into a fire station, was indeed ravaged by fire in 1922. Fire and blood, as Cordélia had prophesied. Samuel Parslow and Cordélia Viau were found guilty of the murder of Isidore Poirier, Cordélia Viau's husband. They were sentenced to death by hanging, which took place on March 10, 1899, before a crowd of about 2,000 people. More than a century after the facts, the Cordélia Viau case continues to divide. Was she a cold and manipulative criminal, or the victim of a monumental judicial error, of a patriarchal society that could not tolerate a free woman? The film Cordélia by Jean Baudin, released in 1980 with Louise Portal in the title role, popularized the innocence theory. The novel by Pauline Cadieux, La lampe dans la fenêtre, turned Cordélia into a tragic heroine. What is certain is that her trial was botched, the evidence was weak, and the prejudices of the time weighed heavily in the balance. As a descendant of the Viau family aptly writes on social media, "I believe that a significant portion of the convictions of ordinary people in the past were judicial errors." A Radio Canada journalist, Sacha Campeau, who traced Cordélia's story, sums up the paradox well. "I can't help but think that if this case aroused so much curiosity, so much resonance, it's because Cordélia Viau was disturbing. She was an atypical woman who, basically, was perhaps born 100 years too early." Cordélia Viau, the last woman hanged in Quebec, remains forever an enigma. Was she a murderer or a martyr? The debate, without a doubt, will never be settled. The Cordélia Viau case inspired numerous books and a film. The Saint Scholastique prison was destroyed by fire in 1922. Cordélia Viau remains to this day the last woman executed in Montreal. Sources: Bibliothèque et Archives nationales du Québec, La Presse, Le Soleil, Radio-Canada, works by Clément Fortin and Éric Veillette.